Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're diving into a story that proves love isn't about luxury, because Truong turned away a life of wealth just to live peaceful days with Tieu. What made him choose a simple market stall and a quiet garden over everything money could buy? Stay with me to find out. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next video. At a small, no-frills stall in the market, Truong stands behind a worn metal scale, moving with the kind of speed you only get after doing the same routine every single day. His hands smell faintly like spring onions and damp earth. The stall looks simple, just baskets of onions, cauliflower, greens laid out on a tarp. But to Truong, this little space is a battlefield and a lifeline. And today, he's not here alone in spirit. Because every time he ties a bag, every time he counts change, he's thinking about one thing: getting home to Tieu and making sure Du won't go to bed hungry or worried. A woman steps up to the stall, scanning the vegetables with a careful eye. Truong's voice turns friendly, practiced. "Vegetables, ma'am? What are you looking for?" She points at the onions first. "How much is this one?" Truong answers smoothly, like the prices are printed in his bones. Large is 5,000, small is 3,000. He reaches down and lifts a bag of peeled onions, two neatly packed, clean, ready to use. "And I've got peeled onions as well. You can just rinse them and cook." That little offer isn't just salesmanship, it's Truong, thinking of someone like Tieu, someone who comes home tired, hands sore, brain full of worries. One less burden. The customer nods. "Give me 2 kilos. Truong places onions on the scale. The needle trembles, then settles. 2 kilos, 10,000. Then she points at the cauliflower. He checks for bruises the way a person checks their own heart for hidden pain. Cauliflower is 20,000. He adds it up out loud, making sure she feels safe. Total 30,000. He starts packing, but before he hands it over, Truong pauses and says gently, almost like a warning that comes from experience, "This one is long. Hold it carefully, okay? If it slips, it'll break." On the surface, it's about vegetables. But inside Truong, it's bigger, because he knows how easily things break. A cauliflower stem, a day's profit, a fragile piece at home. He's learned that life can crack from one careless moment, one cruel rumor, one unexpected knock at the door, one bill you didn't plan for. The woman takes the bag, and something tight in Truong's chest loosens just a little. Because more means the stall empties faster. More means a bit more certainty when he walks back to Tieu and Du tonight. The market is noisy, vendors shouting, motorbikes squeezing past, customers bargaining like it's sport. But Truong's mind keeps drifting back to his small home. He can already picture Du's face, that eager look when he hears Truong's footsteps. He can already hear Tieu's voice, trying to sound strong even when she's exhausted. And that's why Truong stands here, counting coins like they're pieces of tomorrow. The crowd keeps moving, and Truong lifts a bunch of spring onions, calling out with fresh energy. "Spring onions, ma'am. Look really beautiful." The same woman glances back. "Really?" Truong nods, offering her the brightest bundles. "Yes, fresh, just harvested." 5,000 a kilo, Truong says, then adds quickly, "If you take more, I'll discount." Because in Truong's world, every kilo matters. Every small choice might decide whether he can buy extra eggs for Du, or medicine if Tieu's cough gets worse, or maybe, just maybe, save a tiny amount for a future that doesn't feel like constant survival. The woman hesitates, calculating. 4 kilos, she says finally. Truong starts bagging them, moving fast. He tries to offer a deal, but the words tumble out a little messy, like he's rushing to keep up with the market rhythm. 4 kilos. for 30,000. He's trying to make it fair for her while still keeping something for himself. She agrees. The deal is done. Truong ties the bag tight, hands her the bundle, and feels that quiet, private relief wash through him. Not happiness exactly, more like a breath, like, okay, today is working. Then the woman points again at the cauliflower, 2 heads, for eating. That phrase hits Truong differently. For eating means family, a table, a warm pot. For a split second, Truong imagines Tieu cooking with these exact vegetables, Du sitting nearby, swinging his legs, asking questions, trying to help, even when he mostly just makes a mess. Truong chooses 2 good cauliflowers, not the bruised ones hidden at the bottom. He could have taken shortcuts, but he doesn't. Because Truong didn't choose this life to become careless. He chose it because he wanted peaceful days, days where he could look at Tieu and know he's protecting something pure. He hands her the cauliflower carefully. Inside, his emotions twist into that familiar mix. Hope and worry, pride and regret. Hope because the stall is emptying. Worry because there's still so much left. Pride because he's earning honestly. Regret because life still feels fragile, like one bad day could undo everything. And the onions remind him of layers, hidden layers. People see Truong as calm, steady. But underneath, there are layers of stress, layers of fear, layers of silent determination. Late at night, when Tieu finally sleeps, Truong sometimes sits alone, thinking about the life he could have had, the money, the comfort, the safety, but then he remembers why he refused it. Because money can buy space, but it can't buy peace. And the peace Truong wants is the kind that comes from coming home to Tieu and Du, knowing he chose them every day with his whole heart. The market stays loud, alive. People keep coming, like waves. Truong keeps selling, like he's building a bridge out of vegetables and coins, leading back to the home that matters most. And then, a new customer steps in. A man, and the next moment begins. Part 2. The man stands close to Truong's stall, looking over the cauliflower like he's checking more than freshness, like he's measuring whether this market, this day, this world is treating him fairly. Truong doesn't wait. He gives the prices clearly. The big ones for 5,000, the small ones for 3,000, sir. The man points quickly. 3 big ones, and 1 small. 15,000. The man nods, no argument. And Truong, almost instinctively, adds a little line that sounds simple but carries pride. Eat the aroma. Eat the flowers. Eat the vegetables. This will warm your home. The man pays and disappears into the crowd. Truong barely has time to breathe before another customer steps up. This time it's an elderly woman, grandma, walking slowly, carefully, but with a steady strength that makes Truong stand a little straighter. Grandma, 3, right? She nods, reaching into her pocket. Truong packs the vegetables neatly, like he's packing respect into the bag as well. She hands him the money. Truong counts it properly, then smiles. Here's your change, Grandma. She adjusts the bag, but Truong notices her legs, how tired they look, how she shifts her weight just slightly, like each step costs something, and Truong can't help it. The words spill out from care, not business. Grandma, why don't you take a bike? It'll save your legs. You won't get so tired. The grandma looks at him and answers with calm confidence, like the kind of wisdom that doesn't need to shout. You should walk, she says. It keeps your legs healthy. Truong blinks, surprised. She continues, explaining like she's teaching him something important. If you ride a bike all the time, your legs get weak. Then one day, you can't stand straight. So, you need to exercise. Truong feels that hit him in a strange place in his chest. Because it's not just about walking, it's about strength. It's about not letting life make you soft. It's about enduring. And suddenly, Truong thinks of Tieu. He thinks of the way she tries to carry everything quietly, like she's afraid to burden anyone. He thinks of Du, who is still small, still growing, still learning what strong looks like. Truong used to think strength was money, a big house, a stable future. But now he knows strength is also this: showing up every day, doing the hard thing, building health, building peace, step by step. The grandma smiles a little, then adds something that makes Truong's heart warm. I'll bring more back for you to sell next time. It's such a small promise, but it turns her from customer into connection. Thank you, Grandma. Be careful on the way home. The grandma walks away, steady steps, disappearing into the market crowd. Truong watches her longer than he needs to, because her walking feels symbolic, like life itself. Slow, steady, unpredictable, but moving forward anyway. And Truong's internal turning point becomes clear. This market isn't only where he sells vegetables, it's where he learns what kind of man he wants to be for Tieu and Du. A gentleman. A man who chooses peace. Eventually, the market noise starts thinning. The light shifts. Shadows stretch across the ground. Truong packs up the remaining produce, shoulders heavy but heart strangely calm. And then we move away from the market into the garden at dusk. The air is cooler here. The sky turns soft and blue, and the rows of vegetables look almost cinematic under the fading light. Someone nearby calls out casually, "It's teasing, light." Rural life always mixes work and joking like that. Then Truong turns and sees her. "Tieu, you're back?" Tieu steps into the yard, tired in a way that goes deeper than muscles. Her eyes go straight to the garden because even when she's exhausted, she can't stop thinking about tomorrow. Truong is already trimming damaged leaves, crouched low, hands careful. "I'm cutting the bad leaves," he says, "so it can grow faster." Tieu watches the pile of discarded leaves grow, and her chest tightens. Because those leaves are waste, but they're also necessary. You can't keep what's damaged. You have to let go, so the plant can survive. We harvested today. The shipper already went to sell. Tieu nods, but inside, emotions swirl. Hope that the sales go well, and regret for how much has to be cut away. Then Truong stands and wipes his hands. "I'm going upstairs to rest now." Tieu immediately shakes her head. "No, you go rest first. I'll handle the rest and you can help later." She says it like she's trying to be strong. But Truong steps closer, gentle but firm. "It's okay," he says. "Let me help you." Tieu tries to protest again, but Truong doesn't argue loudly. He just insists with kindness. "Just sit down." Those words land like a blanket around her shoulders. Not because they fix everything, but because they remind her she isn't alone. Truong continues softly. "I'll put away my things, and then I'll come back to help you." And right there, under the dusk sky, the real heart of the story appears. Truong could have chosen wealth. He could have lived a life where he never had to stand at a market stall, never had to count coins, never had to worry about vegetables breaking. But Truong rejected that life. He rejected it because he wanted peaceful days with Tieu, and he wanted Du to grow up seeing love in action, not in money. In a man who comes home and says, "Sit down, I've got you." Her eyes sting not from onions this time, but from emotion. Because life is still hard, but it's no longer lonely. The garden glows softly as night comes in. Trimmed leaves become a symbol of burdens being released. Exhaustion becomes a bridge between them, not a wall. And in the final quiet moment, Truong's choice feels clear and unshakable. He didn't give up wealth for nothing. He gave it up for peace, for love, for the kind of home where Tieu can breathe and Dewey can feel safe. And as the day ends, the story closes on that simple truth. A man steps up to Truong's stall, scanning the cauliflower like he's weighing more than vegetables, like he's weighing his whole week. The market is still loud, but Truong keeps his voice steady and clear. The big ones are 5,000, the small ones are 3,000, sir. The man points fast. 3 big, 1 small. Truong picks them carefully, checking the stems, turning each one to make sure there's no hidden bruise. He sets them on the scale and watches the needle settle. 15,000. No arguing, no bargaining, just a nod. The kind of simple agreement that feels like a small miracle in a place where every coin usually gets debated. As Truong bags the cauliflower, he adds softly, almost like advice from one home to another. Eat the aroma, eat the flowers, eat the vegetables. It's sweet today. The man gives a short smile, takes the bag, and disappears into the crowd. Before Truong can even wipe his hands, an elderly woman steps forward, Grandma. She walks slowly but steady, like she's been doing this route for decades. Truong's shoulders straighten without him noticing. His tone softens. She nods, reaching into her pocket. Truong bags her vegetables neatly, almost gently, and hands them over like they're something precious. She gives him the money with fingers that look stiff from age. Truong counts it carefully, then returns the change with respect. Here you go, Grandma. She adjusts the bag, and Truong notices her legs, how she shifts her weight, how tired they look. The sight pinches his heart. He thinks of Tieu carrying exhaustion without complaint. He thinks of Dewey's small feet running around the yard, still full of energy, still innocent. Without thinking too hard, Truong says, Grandma, why don't you take a bike? It'll save your legs. You won't get so tired. Grandma looks at him and shakes her head, calm and certain. You should walk, she says. Walking keeps your legs healthy. Truong blinks, surprised, and she continues as if she's teaching him something he'll need later in life. If you ride a bike all the time, your legs get weak. Then one day you can't stand straight, so you need to exercise. The words land deeper than Truong expects. It doesn't feel like she's only talking about legs. It feels like she's talking about endurance, about not letting comfort steal your strength, about staying upright in a world that keeps trying to bend you. Truong swallows and nods slowly. He understands that kind of strength because he's been living it. He chose a harder road on purpose, not because he loved suffering, but because he loved peace more than luxury. Grandma smiles a little, then adds something that warms Truong's chest. I'll bring more back for you to sell next time. It's a small promise, but it turns her from customer into connection. Like this stall isn't just a place to buy food, it's part of the village's heartbeat. Truong smiles back. Sincere. Thank you, Grandma. Be careful going home. Grandma walks away, steady step after steady step, disappearing into the thinning crowd. Truong watches her longer than necessary, as if her walking is a lesson he doesn't want to forget. As the sun drops, the market finally starts to quiet. Truong packs up what's left, hands aching, shoulders heavy. The smell of onions and soil clings to him. For a moment, his mind flashes to the other life he could have taken, the wealthy one, the easy one, the one where he wouldn't have to count coins or worry about spoiled produce. But that life never had Tieu's eyes in it. It never had Dewey's laughter. So Truong keeps packing, keeps moving, keeps walking. By the time he gets home, dusk has wrapped the garden in soft blue light. Someone nearby calls out teasingly, You're going to check on the ploughing, right? Go play. Truong gives a tired smile and steps into the yard just as Tieu returns. Tieu, you're back, he says, his voice gentler than the evening air. Tieu looks worn down, the kind of tired that lives in the shoulders and the eyes. Truong is already crouched by the plants, trimming damaged leaves with careful hands. "I'm cutting the bad leaves," he explains, "so it can grow faster." Tieu watches the pile of discarded leaves grow. Something tight twists in her chest, regret for what has to be thrown away, and hope that new growth will come. The shipper already went to sell. Tieu nods slowly, but her body looks like it's ready to collapse. Truong stands, wipes his hands, and says, "I'm going upstairs to rest now." "No, you rest first. I'll handle the rest, and you can help later." "Let me help you." Tieu starts to protest again, and Truong cuts in softly, no argument. "Just sit down." 2 words, but they land like warmth, like permission, like safety. Truong adds, voice calm, "I'll put away my things, then I'll come back and help you." Tieu finally sits. Her breath shakes slightly, like she didn't realize how much she was holding in. From inside the house, Dui's voice suddenly bursts out, bright and excited. "Dad, you're home!" Truong's face softens instantly. The heaviness of the day loosens. "Yeah," Truong answers, quiet but steady. "I'm here!" Du runs out and grabs Truong's hand like it's the safest thing in the world. And in that fading light, Truong's choice becomes clear again, not in speeches, not in grand gestures, but in the simplest truth. He rejected wealth for this peace, for this home, for the moment where Tieu can finally rest, and Dui can smile without fear. In a bustling rural market, a hard-working seller moves through the day weighing onions, spring onions, and cauliflower, feeling the pressure of every price and the fragile hope behind each sale. Small exchanges reveal deeper emotions, regret when vegetables might break, relief when a deal is made, and unexpected warmth when an elderly woman shares simple wisdom about staying strong by walking. As dusk falls, the story shifts to a quiet garden where damaged leaves are trimmed away, symbolizing burdens being released so new growth can begin. Tieu returns home exhausted, but she's not alone. Truong gently insists on helping, choosing care over comfort and companionship over pride. By rejecting a wealthy life, Truong proves his love in everyday actions, building a peaceful future with Tieu through resilience, kindness, and shared strength.